Hey everyone, tonight I'm bringing you 4 unsettling Reddit threads that honestly kept me up. You know what to do, like, sub, and let's go.
A guy at my gym, 29M, has been copying my exact schedule for months, and I just found out that's not all he's been doing. Posted to r/lesnameet 3 days ago, by throwaway_tgym0614. So I need to get this out somewhere because I'm still processing it, and I don't really know what to do next. I'm 29, male, work as a speech therapist at a private clinic in the suburbs. I live with my mother, Diane. It's just the two of us. I've been going to the same gym for over a year now, always early mornings before my shifts. 5:15 a.m., same rotation of machines, same order every time. I'm a creature of habit, I know that about myself. About 2 months ago, I started noticing this middle-aged guy. Not old, maybe late 40s, average build, nothing that would stand out in a crowd. But he was always there, every single session. And not just there, he was on the same machines I was using, in roughly the same order, at exactly the same times. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Plenty of people have morning routines. Maybe we just had similar programs. But something about it sat wrong. He never spoke to me, never even looked at me directly. It was like he was running a parallel version of my workout, 3 benches over. Then Tyler changed gyms. I switched to a location across town. Didn't tell anyone except Priya, a coworker at my clinic. I figured if the guy just happened to have a similar schedule, that would be the end of it. 4 days. He showed up 4 days later. Same time slot, same rotation, same careful distance. My chest got tight. I went up to the front desk that evening after he'd left and asked to look at the guest sign-in log. They let me flip through it. I was scanning for anything, any name I recognized, anything off. And then I saw it. The name he'd been signing in under was my last name spelled backward, letter for letter. Not close, not similar, exact. Like he wanted me to find it eventually. Like it was a game to him, and he'd been waiting for me to finally look. I stood there at that front desk, and I felt my stomach just drop through the floor. I put the log down and walked out to my car and sat there for I don't know how long. I keep thinking about the fact that he did this for months. He watched me, mirrored me, and signed his little reverse name every single time, like a signature on something I wasn't supposed to read yet. Tyler tried to talk himself out of it. I spent the next few days convincing myself I was losing it. Maybe the reverse name was a coincidence. Maybe it was some inside joke I didn't understand. Something that had nothing to do with me. People have weird senses of humor. I went back to the new gym and forced myself to just work out and stop looking. But I couldn't stop looking. The guy was there every single time. Late 40s, medium height, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. He was always friendly with the front desk staff, always wiped down his machines, never once glanced in my direction. That was the part that got to me the most. The deliberateness of not looking. Like he knew exactly where I was at all times and was making a point of performing disinterest. I told Priya. She's a co-worker at my clinic, one of the other speech therapists, and she's the kind of person who doesn't jump to conclusions. She listened, and I could tell she thought I was maybe reading too much into it. She said something like, maybe he just switched gyms too. People do that. I didn't push it, but I could tell a part of her was filing it away. Then Priya sent a photo. About a week later, I got a text from her around 7 in the evening. Just a photo, no caption at first. It was a dark gray sedan parked at the far end of our clinic's lot. I recognized it immediately. Same car I'd seen in the gym parking lot multiple times. Before I could respond, she texted again. She said she'd noticed that car at least 3 or 4 times over the past couple of weeks. Always parked in the same far corner. Always empty. She only made the connection because she'd started paying attention after our conversation. I sat on my couch and stared at that photo and felt the walls of my apartment, my mother's house, closing around me. This wasn't just the gym. He was at my job. I started changing things. Leaving the clinic 10 minutes early one day, 20 minutes late the next, parking on different streets. But the car kept appearing. Not every day,
but enough. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? A man goes to the same gym as me and parks near my work and signed a guest log with a name that might be mine backward? It sounds paranoid. It sounds like nothing. And I haven't told my mom any of this. Diane is trusting by nature, and I don't want her looking over her shoulder in her own home because of something I can't even prove yet.
Tyler started building a file of his own. After Priya sent me that photo, I knew I couldn't just sit on this anymore. I went back to the gym the next morning and asked to see the guest sign-in log again. This time, I took photos of every page where that reverse name appeared. 11 entries over roughly 2 months. I also started photographing the dark gray sedan whenever it showed up at the clinic lot. Got clear shots of the plates on 3 separate occasions. Priya and I spent a lunch break trying to figure out who this could be. She asked if I'd had any run-ins with anyone, any conflict I might be forgetting. I hadn't. She asked about former patients, whether any family had ever gotten hostile or weird. I went through my caseload mentally. I've worked with dozens of kids over the past few years, mostly early intervention stuff, speech delays, articulation issues. The parents are usually grateful. I couldn't land on anyone. I filed a non-emergency police report that same week. The officer was polite, but honest. He said without direct threats, physical contact, or communication from this person, there wasn't much they could act on. He suggested I document everything and call back if the behavior escalated. I left the station feeling like I'd accomplished nothing. A lot of people have told me to tell my mom what's going on, and they're right. I did talk to Diane. I told her to be careful about answering the door for people she doesn't know, and not to give out any personal information to strangers. But I didn't tell her why. I didn't explain any of this. I just framed it as general safety stuff. She kind of laughed and said she's been living in this neighborhood for 30 years and knows everyone on the block. And I sat there and nodded and felt like the worst son alive. Because the truth is, I'm scared that if I tell her the full picture, she'll be terrified in her own house. And I don't want that for her. Not yet. Not until I know more about who this man actually is. Nocturnal Wrecker. The reverse last name thing is what got me. That's not accidental. That's someone who wanted you to eventually find it and know. Velvet Static. Please tell me your clinic has updated their security protocols. If he got that close to your personal life, there is no way he didn't also show up there, outside of the car. Gravel Lungs. I work in family law, and this pattern, fixation on a caregiver figure after a custody loss, is more common than people think. Doesn't make it less terrifying. That's exactly what the detective told me. Kid lost primary custody about 6 months before I started treating his son. The detective said he probably latched onto me because I was the only adult his son responded well to during that period. Knowing the why doesn't make it easier. If anything, it makes me second guess every parent interaction I've had since. A few days later, Tyler posted an update. His ex-wife sent me photos of the journals, and I feel sick. I got a message 3 days ago from a woman named Laura. She said she was the ex-wife of a man named Keith, and that she needed to talk to me. I didn't recognize her name at first, but when she said Keith's last name, everything locked into place. Keith is the father of a boy I treated for a speech delay about 3 years ago. The kid was maybe 4 at the time. Sweet boy. Had a rough home situation with the custody battle going on. I worked with him for about 6 months before the family moved out of our clinic's coverage area. Laura told me she'd been at Keith's apartment for a custody-related document exchange and found notebooks in his closet. She photographed the pages and sent them to me. I opened those images and I just sat there. 14 months of entries. My gym schedule down to the minute. The route I drive to work. The route I drive home. What time I leave the clinic on which days. The car I drive, the color, the plates. But the entries that made me physically ill were the ones describing visits to my house while I was at work. Keith had been inside Tyler's life longer than the gym. According to the journals, Keith had been showing up at our front door, posing as a water quality surveyor. He had a clipboard, he had a polo shirt. He would knock and my mother would answer, and they would talk. I called Diane that night
and asked her as calmly as I could whether anyone had been coming by the house. She said yes, actually. A very nice man from the county had stopped by several times over the past year or so to check on the water lines in the neighborhood. She said he was polite, always asked how she was doing, asked about me sometimes, how work was going, whether I was home much. She said she figured he was just friendly. She estimated he'd come by roughly a dozen times. I sat on the phone and listened to my mother describe a stranger extracting information about my life from her front porch for over a year, and she had no idea. She thought he was being neighborly. The thing that keeps hitting me is that none of the warning signs I noticed, the gym, the car at the clinic, those were recent. Keith had access to my mother's trust long before I ever spotted him on the bench press. Okay, Burner. 14 months of journals. 14. That man had a whole second job, and it was you, Pastel Panic. Your poor mom. She probably feels horrible, but none of this is her fault. A dozen visits is insane, said my truck Steve. Honestly, the scariest part for me. My mom would have done the exact same thing. Older people in suburbs trust people who show up in a polo with a clipboard. That's social engineering at its most basic, and it works almost every time. The journals changed everything. Laura turned the notebooks over to police that same week. Once they had the physical evidence, 14 months of documented stalking, detailed routes, descriptions of visits to my home, things moved fast. A detective contacted me within 2 days and walked me through the process of filing for a restraining order. It was granted against Keith 10 days later. The detective told me Keith didn't contest it, didn't show up to the hearing at all. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. Diane and I installed a doorbell camera the weekend after I told her everything. Sitting her down and explaining what had actually been happening was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. She went quiet in a way I've never seen from her. Then she said something that still sits with me. She said she always thought his questions were a little odd. He'd ask things like what time I usually got home, whether I worked weekends, if I ever brought colleagues over. She said a small part of her noticed it, but she told herself he was just making friendly conversation. She said she feels stupid. She's not stupid. She's a woman who's lived in the same suburb for 30 years and trusted a man who showed up at her door with a smile and a clipboard. I still work at the same clinic. Priya checks the parking lot most days out of habit now, and I'm grateful for that, even though the gray sedan hasn't appeared since the restraining order. I cancelled both gym memberships. I run outside now, different route every time, never the same path twice in a row. Every night before bed, I pull up the doorbell camera app and scroll through the day's footage. Every delivery driver, every neighbor walking a dog, every car that slows down near the driveway. I know that's not sustainable. I know I can't live like that forever. But right now, it's what I need. The thing I keep coming back to is that I thought the scariest part of this was the gym. The mirrored workouts, the reversed name, the car in the clinic lot. But the scariest part was never any of that. The scariest part was a man standing on my front porch talking to my mother about me while she offered him a glass of water. And neither of them thought anything was wrong. One of them because he knew exactly what he was doing, and the other because she's kind. Semi-truck Steve. The fact that he picked a fake survey job that gave him a reason to ask questions about the house is genuinely strategic. This guy planned every angle. On to the next one. I, 34M, think someone in our group chat is pretending to be my friend Wes, and they know things about my apartment they shouldn't. This one sat wrong with me from the first message. I am a 34-year-old real estate agent living alone. Well, along with my dog Benny, in a second-floor apartment on the east side of town. I have been in a group chat with 4 close friends for about 6 years now. There is Wes, my college buddy who moved back to the area after grad school. Javier, who lives 3 doors down from me in the same building and is the reason I found this apartment in the first place. Camille, who has been dating some guy named Ross for the past few months
that none of us have actually met in person, and Derek, 5 of us total. We talk every single day. Stupid memes, work complaints, weekend plans, who is bringing what to poker night, the usual. About 3 weeks ago, Wes started texting from new numbers. First one popped up on a Tuesday, then another a few days later, then a third. Always him though. Same humor, same references to things only our group would get, same way of typing. We all just figured he was burning through prepaid phones or dealing with some carrier issue he did not feel like explaining. Nobody questioned it seriously. He was still Wes, or so we all thought. Then came bar night. Last Friday, all 5 of us got together at Donnelly's for the first time in about a month. We were crammed into a booth by the front window, 2 pitchers in, and Wes just casually drops it mid-conversation. My phone got stolen out of my car 3 weeks ago. I have not sent a single text since. He said it like it was nothing, like he was mentioning a parking ticket. The table went dead quiet. I looked at Javier. Javier looked at Camille. We all pulled up the group chat on our phones, scrolling back through 3 weeks of messages from someone who was not Wes. Before anyone could process what that meant, the chat pinged again. New unknown number. A photo. All 5 of us sitting in that booth, taken through the exact window we were next to. Time stamped that minute. I whipped around so fast I nearly knocked over my glass. Nothing outside. Just a dark parking lot, a handful of cars, the glow of the neon bar sign reflecting off wet asphalt. Whoever took that photo was already gone, or they were standing just outside the light where we could not see them. We sat there staring out at nothing but black glass for what felt like forever. Nobody said a word. My first thought was Benny, alone in my apartment 3 blocks away. Nobody wanted to be alone after that. We left Donnelly's as a group. All 5 of us walked to the parking lot together, checking over our shoulders the whole time. Derek kept saying it had to be someone messing with us. Maybe somebody at the bar who overheard our conversation and thought it would be funny. Nobody believed that, but nobody had a better explanation either. Wes pulled up his carrier account right there in the parking lot and showed us. His line had been suspended since the theft. Whoever was in that group chat, it was not him. Javier and I drove back to our building together. I triple-checked my locks, turned on every light in the apartment, and sat on the couch with Benny pressed against my leg. He would not settle down. Kept pacing to the front door, sniffing under it, whining. I barely slept. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. New numbers, always casual. Whoever this was, they had the tone down perfectly. References to poker night, to the time Wes lost his keys at the lake house 2 summers ago, to inside jokes that never existed anywhere except our group thread. They had clearly read the entire chat history off the stolen phone. But then I started noticing something else. The messages were too specific. On Tuesday, I mentioned in the group chat that I had a showing at 3 in the afternoon. 20 minutes later, a text from a new number. Hope the showing goes well. Do not forget to check the closets this time. That was a joke from months ago when I accidentally locked myself in a walk-in during an open house. Fine, that was in the chat history. But on Thursday, I told only Javier, in person, face-to-face in the hallway, that I was staying in for the night. Within the hour, the unknown number texted the group. Quiet night in? Same. I brought it up with everyone. Javier started paying closer attention to the timing. Camille suggested maybe Wes's cloud backup was compromised, that someone had ongoing access to synced messages. Wes changed every password he had. New email, new iCloud, 2-factor on everything. The messages did not stop. I ran a spyware scan on my own phone. Clean. I started leaving Benny with extra water and locking the deadbolt even when I was just going downstairs to check the mail. Then last night, I got a direct message. Not in the group chat, just to me, from another unknown number. It said, "You should move the leash off the back of the bathroom door. It is going to scratch the paint." I keep Benny's leash on a hook on the back of my bathroom door. I have never mentioned that to anyone. You cannot see it from a window. You would have to be standing inside my apartment to know that. The leash detail broke something in him. After that direct message, I tore my apartment apart, checked every window latch, every vent cover, even unscrewed the plates on the light switches looking for cameras. Nothing. Benny followed me room to room, like he could feel it too.
I started sleeping with the chair wedged under the front door handle. At work, I could not focus. I kept pulling up my open house sign-in sheets, flipping through pages of names, wondering if one of them had been walking through listings with me, while quietly cataloging details about my life. I told Javier everything over coffee in his kitchen. He listened without interrupting, then asked me something I was not expecting. He wanted to see the timestamps, not from the group chat, from my private text thread with Camille. I did not understand at first. He explained it like this. Every time the impersonator sent a message that referenced something specific about my plans or my schedule, Javier wanted to check whether I had mentioned that same detail to Camille shortly before. So we sat at his kitchen table and lined them up. Tuesday, I texted Camille at 2:15 that I had a showing at 3. At 2:37, the unknown number referenced the showing in the group chat. Thursday, I told Camille I was staying in. 40 minutes later, the impersonator texted the group about a quiet night. It was like that for almost every single one. He did not want to see the pattern, but it was already there. I told Javier there had to be another explanation. Camille has been one of my closest friends for years. He just looked at me and said, "Test it." So I did. I texted Camille that I had a last-minute showing the next morning at a property on Ridgemont Drive. There is no listing on Ridgemont Drive. I made it up. 17 minutes later, a new unknown number texted the group chat. "Heard you are out near Ridgemont tomorrow. Watch out for the construction on 5th. My hands were shaking. I did not say anything to Camille. I could not. Not yet. Instead, I went back to the sign-in sheets. I spread a month's worth of them across my living room floor and started comparing the handwriting. 3 names I did not recognize. One from a townhouse I showed 2 weeks ago, one from a condo open house the week before that, and one from a duplex showing early last month. Different names, different contact numbers, but the handwriting was nearly identical. The way the lowercase r connected to the next letter, the sharp angle on every capital T. Someone had been walking through my open houses in person, standing right next to me, signing in under fake names, and I had smiled and handed them a brochure every single time. Nocturnal Rider. The photo through the window would have made me lose it on the spot. That is not just stalking, that is someone enjoying the control of proving they are right there. Voidling hours. The detail about Javier noticing the timing pattern is wild. You were too close to it to see, but every single message lined up with what you told Camille privately. That is surgical. Basement frequency. I do not understand how Ross got the group chat details from Wes's stolen phone. Was the chat on an app that syncs to new devices, or did he clone the SIM? The technical side matters here, because it changes what he still has access to. It was a standard group iMessage thread, not an app. Wes did not have a passcode on his phone, which he has admitted was stupid. Ross would have had access to the full chat history the second he opened it. Every name, every number, every message going back over 2 years. The new numbers he kept texting from were prepaid phones. My carrier confirmed 4 different numbers sent messages to the group in that 3-week window alone. 2 days later, the OP came back with an update. He texted again last night, and I need to leave. I called Camille yesterday. I did not accuse her of anything. I just asked, as casually as I could manage, whether Ross ever picked up her phone. The silence on the other end lasted long enough that I knew the answer before she said it. She told me Ross picks up her phone all the time. He knows her passcode. She said he reads her messages openly, and she never thought twice about it, because he told her he just liked feeling connected to her life. I walked her through the timestamps. Every private message I had sent her about my schedule, my showings, my plans for the evening. Each one followed within minutes by a message from the impersonator that referenced or mirrored the same information. Camille went back through her phone while we were still on the call. She got quiet, then she said, "Oh God, he read everything." Every single conversation she and I had ever had, every detail about my apartment, about Benny, about my routine, all of it funneled straight to Ross through a woman who thought her boyfriend was just being affectionate. The open house sheets told the rest. I put the 3 sign-in sheets with the matching handwriting and photographed them side by side. Different names, different phone numbers, all fake. But the handwriting was the same person. Ross had physically walked into my open houses on 3 separate occasions. He stood in kitchens and living rooms with me. I shook his hand. I gave him my card. He asked about square footage and school districts, and I answered every question while having no idea I was talking to the person who had been inside my group chat for weeks, pretending to be my best friend. That is what finally made it click. This was never about Wes. It was never about the group. Ross stole the phone out of opportunity, a car window, an unlocked door, whatever. He read the entire chat history and found me through it. Every message he sent as Wes was pointed at me. The jokes, the references, the escalation, all of it designed to get reactions from me specifically. Camille was just the window he watched through. The group chat was just the room he stood in. I was the only thing on the wall. Feral librarian. The fact that nobody in the group had ever met Ross in person is a massive red flag in hindsight. Camille was basically handing this guy a live feed of your life without knowing it. Salt and static. What gets me is how long the impersonation went on before Wes even knew. 3 weeks of someone wearing your identity in a chat full of your closest friends and nobody caught it. Feral librarian. That is honestly the most disturbing layer for me too. The impersonator had Wes's entire message history to study. Tone, slang, the way he shortens words. 3 weeks is a long time to practice being someone in front of the people who know him best, and not get caught once. Camille confronted Ross that same night. She called me after, said she sat him down and told him she knew everything. The stolen phone, the fake messages, the open houses under fake names. She said Ross did not argue, did not deny it, did not raise his voice. He just stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out of her apartment without a single word. By the next morning, his phone was disconnected. His social media accounts were gone. Camille drove to his place 2 days later, and the neighbor told her he had already moved out. Cleared the whole apartment in less than 24 hours. A week went by. No messages from unknown numbers. No new texts in the group chat from anyone who should not be there. I started breathing again. I stopped wedging the chair under my front door. Benny seemed calmer too. No more pacing. No more whining at nothing. Javier checked in every day, but even he started saying maybe it was over. Maybe Ross got scared when he realized he had been figured out and just ran. I wanted to believe that. I let myself believe it for 7 days. 7 days exactly. Tonight around 9:45, the group chat pinged. New unknown number. 1 message. My full apartment address. Building name, street number, unit 212. Typed out completely. Nobody in the group responded. I just stared at it. 30 seconds later, a second message from the same number. 1 word. Lobby. Benny's head snapped toward the front door before I even processed what I was reading. He started growling low in his throat, that deep vibration I have only heard from him once before, when a stranger accidentally tried our door handle last year. I am typing this from my bedroom right now. I am putting Benny on his leash. I am going out through the fire escape at the end of my hallway, and I am not stopping until I reach Javier's car in the garage, 1 floor down. If I post again, you will know I made it somewhere safe. If anyone has any advice at all, please leave it here, because I do not know where to go, and I do not know what this person is willing to do next. Quiet panic mode. I work in real estate too, and the open house sign-in sheets just made my stomach drop. We hand clipboards to literally anyone who walks in. I am rethinking that whole system now. Signal lost. Call the police right now. Do not wait. Do not post on Reddit first. You have the photo from the bar. You have the text. You have the sign-in sheets with matching handwriting. That is more than enough for a report. Call them while you are moving. Hollow walls. Do not take the fire escape. I am serious. If he sent lobby to flush you out of the front, then he knows the building layout, and he could be waiting at ground level by the exit. Go to Javier's unit and lock yourselves in. Let someone else be your eyes on the street before you go outside. On to the next one. My girlfriend, 24 Fondo Franc, always knows exactly what I need after my accidents, and I,
25 Fondoma. I'm starting to think she knows because she caused them. Posted to r/relationship advice 3 days ago. I'm a 25-year-old guy, work as a dental hygienist, and I live with my mother, Diane, out in a rural cottage about 40 minutes from the nearest town. I know that sounds like a lot for a grown man, but it's just how things worked out after my dad passed, and honestly, I like it out here. I've been seeing my girlfriend, Nora, 24 Fondomas, for about 8 months now. She stays over most weekends. She's sweet, attentive, the kind of person who remembers your coffee order after hearing it once. I thought I was the luckiest guy alive, but over the past 4 months, I've had this string of accidents at home that I can't stop thinking about. First, it was a scalded hand. The kettle was sitting right on the edge of the counter, and I bumped it reaching for a mug. Boiling water all over my right hand. Nora had burn cream in her bag, not in the medicine cabinet, in her overnight bag. Then, a few weeks later, I fell down the porch steps because a board had come loose. I could have sworn that board was solid the day before. Nora had the right bandages and splint wraps ready before I even finished swearing. Third time was an allergic reaction to something in a dinner she made for us. My throat started tightening up. Nora already had antihistamines out on the nightstand. Every single time she was calm, never panicked, never surprised, just ready. He thought it was devotion. I told everyone how lucky I was. I told my co-worker Raj that Nora was the most caring person I'd ever been with. I believed it completely. Then, last weekend happened. I spent most of Saturday night throwing up violently. Just hours of it. Couldn't keep water down. Nora sat with me the whole time, rubbing my back, handing me electrolyte packets she happened to have packed. I figured it was food poisoning. My mom figured something else. On Monday after Nora left, my mother was cleaning under the kitchen sink and found a bottle of Ipecac syrup tucked behind the bleach. Opened. Neither of us bought it. Neither of us had ever owned Ipecac in our lives. It appeared sometime during Nora's visit. I looked up what Ipecac does. It induces vomiting. Exactly what happened to me. My hands are shaking typing this. I keep replaying every accident, every time she was perfectly prepared, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. Am I being paranoid, or is my girlfriend hurting me on purpose so she can take care of me? Ethan started paying attention. After my last post, I sat with my mom at the kitchen table for almost 2 hours, going through everything. She had already started writing it down. Dates, what happened, whether Nora was there. Every single incident lined up with one of her weekend visits. The scalded hand, Saturday morning, Nora had arrived Friday night. The porch steps, Sunday afternoon, she was still there. The allergic reaction, Saturday dinner that she cooked. The vomiting, Saturday night, 4 for 4. My mom brought this up gently, like she was afraid I'd shut her out. And honestly, I almost did. I told her she was reading too much into it, that Nora was just prepared because she cared, that some people carry first aid stuff because they're thoughtful. My mom just looked at me and said she'd never in her life met someone who packed Ipecac syrup in a weekend bag. I didn't have an answer for that. Raj at work had actually made a joke a few weeks back about how I needed to bubble wrap myself. He said it laughing, but it stuck with me. 4 accidents in 4 months after years of nothing. I told my mom I wasn't ready to confront Nora, but that she could keep her notes. I asked her not to say anything. Not yet. I needed to see for myself. The next weekend came. Nora arrived Friday evening like always. I was watching her differently now, and I hated myself for it. Her overnight bag looked heavier than usual. It thudded when she set it on the bedroom floor. Normally I wouldn't notice something like that. She offered to make tea for everyone, including my mom. She's never done that before. Usually it's just for me and her. I said sure, and then watched from the hallway as she moved around the kitchen. I couldn't see anything wrong. She just made tea. But then, over dinner, she asked me twice whether I'd been to see a doctor about the vomiting episode. I said no, I felt fine now. She seemed almost disappointed. She asked if I was sure, said she'd read that repeated vomiting could indicate something serious, said maybe I should get blood work done. I kept my voice normal, but my stomach was turning. Later that night, I watched her unzip her bag to get her pajamas,
and I caught a glimpse of what looked like a small, zippered pouch I'd never seen before, packed tight with something. She noticed me looking and shifted her body to block my view, smiled at me, said she was tired. I lay awake next to her for hours. Every good memory had a shadow behind it now. I keep thinking about the night after the scalding. My hand was wrapped up, throbbing, and Nora sat next to me on the couch, holding my wrist so gently, like I was made of glass. She looked me right in the eyes and said she would always take care of me. I remember feeling so grateful, I almost cried. Now that memory makes me want to peel my own skin off. Was she admiring her work? Was that tenderness part of it? I brought this up with Raj at the dental office because he could tell something was wrong. I was spacing out between patients, dropping instruments. He pulled me aside during lunch and asked what was going on. I told him everything, the accidents, the ipecac, my mom's timeline. He went quiet for a long time and then said I needed to go through Nora's things, her bag, her phone, whatever I could access. I told him that felt like a violation of her privacy, and he looked at me like I'd lost my mind. He said she violated your body, man. That landed. Then my mom dropped something on me I wasn't expecting. She'd been digging on her own without telling me. She found Nora's social media accounts and through tagged photos, tracked down what looks like an ex-boyfriend. She hasn't reached out to him yet, but she showed me the profile. I was furious. I told her she had no right to do that behind my back. She just sat there and took it. Then she said, if I'm wrong about all of this, no harm done. But if I'm right, that man might have answers. I didn't sleep that night either. The comments were already sounding the alarm. RN Maggie K. The ipecac detail made my stomach drop. That stuff was pulled from most pharmacy shelves years ago, specifically because of abuse cases like this. She went out of her way to find it. Lateral thinking. Brother, screenshot and back up that spreadsheet to a cloud account she has zero access to. Do it before she realizes you found it. That document is your entire case. Not gonna sugarcoat. This is textbook Munchausen by proxy behavior, adapted to a romantic relationship. Please get a professional involved, not just the police. You need someone who understands this specific pathology. I had never even heard that term until my mom used it. I work in healthcare, and I still did not connect what was happening to me with anything clinical. Every single time I got hurt or sick, my first feeling was relief that Nora was there. She would stroke my hair and tell me she would always take care of me. I am in therapy now, and my therapist says that is exactly the bond this behavior is designed to create. Ethan came back with an update. I found her spreadsheet and it had future entries. Nora came over last Friday like usual. Saturday morning, she went to take a shower and left her tablet on the kitchen table. I had never gone through her things before. I want you to understand that. 8 months together, and I never once looked at her phone or her tablet because I trusted her completely. But Raj's voice was in my head, and my mom's timeline was taped to the inside of her closet door. And that bottle of ipecac was still sitting in a plastic bag in my mom's bedroom, where she'd saved it. So I opened the tablet. It wasn't even locked. I found a spreadsheet app and there was one file titled Care Log. I opened it and my vision went narrow, like looking through a tube. There were columns: date, planned incident, expected symptoms, supplies to pack, estimated recovery window. Every single accident I'd had was in there. The kettle scald, listed 3 days before it happened. Supplies column said burn cream, gauze, cooling gel. The porch step, listed 4 days before. Supplies said compression bandage, splint wrap. The allergic reaction. She had written which ingredient would trigger it and what antihistamine dose to carry. The ipecac entry just said emetic, 12 to 24 hour recovery, electrolyte packets. All of it planned, all of it premeditated. But the part that broke me was scrolling past the last entry and finding 2 more rows. Future dates. One said, space heater, bedroom, carbon monoxide risk. The other said, cleaning product mixture, respiratory. She was planning to keep going. She was planning worse. I screenshotted everything with shaking hands and went to wake my mother. Quiet one, your mom is incredible. She saw what love was blinding you to. Listen to her, dude from Ohio. The fact that she had future entries planned is the part that genuinely terrifies me. She wasn't reacting, she was scheduling. Lateral thinking. Agreed. The spreadsheet reframes every single accident retroactively. It means the loose step on the porch was not old wood. The food poisoning was not bad leftovers. Every incident had a row in her planner before it had a bruise on his body. Diane had not been waiting around. What I didn't know was that my mom had already messaged Nora's ex. She did it before I even found the spreadsheet. He responded within hours. He told her that during his relationship with Nora, he had a series of unexplained injuries and illnesses over the course of about 6 months. A cut from a kitchen knife that had been left blade up in a dish rack. A stomach bug that kept coming back. A sprained ankle from a loose rock on a hardwood floor. And every single time, Nora was right there with exactly what he needed. He said he ended things when he noticed she seemed almost excited when he was hurt. Not panicked, not worried, but focused and purposeful, like she had been rehearsing. He never had proof, he just left. When my mom showed me his messages, I sat at the kitchen table and cried. I confronted Nora that Sunday with my mom in the room. I had my phone recording in my pocket. I pulled out the spreadsheet screenshots and asked her to explain. She didn't flinch. She said it was an anxiety management tool, that she liked to feel prepared for emergencies because she worried about me. I asked her why the entries were dated before the accidents happened. She said she'd gone back and adjusted the dates by mistake. I asked about the IPECAC. She went quiet. I asked about the 2 future entries, the space heater, the cleaning chemicals. She stood up and said she didn't have to listen to this. She left the cottage, and I haven't seen her since. I filed for a protective order the next day, and it was granted. Nora hasn't tried to contact me since it was served. I don't know if that means she's moved on, or if she's just waiting. I'm in therapy now. I'm still living with my mom, and I'm grateful for that every single day. Raj checks in on me at work. I'm functioning, but I want to be honest about what this did to me. The worst part isn't the injuries or the sickness. The worst part is that I felt loved. Genuinely, deeply loved. Every time she bandaged my hand, or held my hair back, or brought me water at 3 in the morning, I felt like the luckiest man alive. And now every one of those memories is evidence. Every tender moment was part of something she planned on a spreadsheet between the date column and the recovery window column. I don't know how to separate the care from the harm anymore. I don't know when someone is kind to me, whether it's real or whether I'm being set up. My therapist says that will take time. I believe her. But right now, I flinch when anyone hands me a cup of tea. Sun-kissed. Sorry. I had an ex who used to keep me slightly sick all the time, so I would be too tired to go out with friends. It escalated to something similar. Please take this seriously. It does not stop. On to the next one. I, 37F, found county records of people who walked to a bend in a river and came back wrong. Now my partner goes there every evening. Posted 6 days ago in r/nosleep. I work as an archivist for the county of Millhaven. Population just under 4,000. The kind of town where nothing changes fast enough for anyone to notice it changing at all. I have been here 11 years now, living with my partner Elliot in a house off Sycamore that his grandmother left him. My days are filing cabinets and water-damaged folders, intake records nobody has requested in decades, welfare checks, brief psychiatric holds, family petitions from the 1940s through the 70s. The paper smells like dust and river silt, and I have never minded that. I started noticing the pattern about 3 months ago. At first, it was just a phrase that kept repeating across unrelated files. Visited the bend, or returned from the river. Social workers in the 50s and 60s kept noting the same thing. A resident would be brought in by family members who said they had gone to a specific bend in the Millhaven River and come back different. The note said things like, altered, not themselves, presenting as unfamiliar to family members. 11 cases across 3 decades, all the same stretch of river.
My coworker Diane has been at the archive for 20 years. When I showed her the pattern, she barely looked up. Small town superstition, she said. People around here have always had stories about that bend. I kept digging anyway. The photograph was filed wrong. That is the only reason she found it. It was misfiled in a 1952 intake folder, tucked behind a property assessment that had no business being there. Black and white, slightly overexposed. A woman standing near the river bend with her arms at her sides. I almost flipped past it. Then my hand stopped moving. The woman in the photograph had my face. Not a resemblance, not a family likeness. My exact bone structure, my jawline, and the scar on the left side of my jaw. The one I have had since I fell off a fence when I was 7. She had it in the same place, the same shape, the same faint white curve I see in the mirror every morning. The photograph was 70 years old. I checked the intake file attached to it. The name printed on the form was not mine. I have never heard it before in my life. I sat there in the archive basement with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and I could not feel my hands. That was my face, my scar. But the life attached to that photograph belonged to someone I have never been. Elliot had not mentioned the river once. I spent the next week pulling every intake file I could find that referenced the event. 11 cases confirmed, spanning 1941 through 1973. The language varied, but the shape of it never did. A husband brought in by his wife, who said he came home from a walk and did not recognize their children for 6 hours. A teenage girl whose mother filed a petition stating her daughter had returned from the river wearing the wrong expression. A man in 1967 whose co-workers reported he forgot how to operate machinery he had used for 15 years, but could suddenly speak a language none of them recognized. In every case, within a few months, the families stopped reporting anything unusual. Not because the person went back to normal, because the community seemed to forget there had ever been a before. I brought it up with Mrs. Voss. She has lived next door to us since before Elliot inherited the house. 84 years old, born in Millhaven, never left. I asked her about the river bend as casually as I could manage. She set her coffee down and looked at me like I had said something obscene. People go down there when they are cold, she said. Best not to ask who is calling. She would not say another word about it. Then Elliot started walking. He said he needed air after dinner. Just a walk, he said. I did not think about it the first 2 nights. The third night, I noticed he always turned left out of the driveway, toward the river. I followed him on the 5th night. He walked for about 20 minutes, steady pace, no hesitation, like he knew exactly where he was going. He stopped at the bend. The same bend from the photographs, the same stretch of bank I had been staring at in black and white for weeks. He stood at the edge of the water and did not move. I watched him from the tree line for almost 40 minutes. He never shifted his weight. He never looked at his phone. He just stood there, facing the current. When he came home, he was cheerful. He kissed me on the forehead and asked if I wanted tea. Then he used the word liminal. Elliot does not use words like that. He is a carpenter. He talks about grain and joinery and weather. He has never once in 6 years said liminal. I told myself it was nothing. Over the next week, he moved every dish in the kitchen to different cabinets. He started sleeping on his back when he has always slept on his side. He laughed at a news segment about a warehouse fire in a way that made my skin tighten. I tried telling Diane. She said I was overworked and needed a weekend off. Maybe she is right, but I keep hearing Mrs. Voss in my head. Cold. He was cold. She could not leave the photograph alone. I searched everything the archive could access. No birth certificate under that name. No death certificate. No census record. No marriage license. The woman in the photograph existed in one place, that single intake folder, and then vanished. I started keeping a journal of Elliot's changes. I needed them on paper because in my head they kept rearranging into something dismissible. Tuesday, he forgot the name of our street, stood in the doorway and said, "What is it again?" like he was asking about a restaurant we went to once. Wednesday, he did not recognize the song I put on while cooking, the one we danced to the night he told me he loved me.
He looked at me blankly. Thursday, he said my name and it sounded wrong, more like he was reading it off a card for the first time. I asked if something was bothering him. He said I was being paranoid. He went to the river that night, like every other night. She needed to see it for herself. I drove out to the bend on a Saturday while Elliot was at a job site. Stood where I had watched him stand. The water moved like water. The mud smelled like mud. I felt nothing at all. But I noticed carvings on a sycamore near the bank. Not initials. Angular symbols I did not recognize, repeated in groups of 3. I photographed them and brought the images to Diane on Monday. She went pale. She said they matched markings from a 1963 county survey that had been pulled from public record and never refiled. She told me to stop looking. I cannot stop. I have started pulling my own records. Birth certificate, college transcripts, anything that proves I am who I have always believed I am. I need at least one document to hold still under my hands. Hallowed ground. The part where the college had no record of you genuinely made my stomach drop. That is not something you can explain away. Threadbare jacket. I keep thinking about Mrs. Voss. You mentioned she has lived next to you for years. Has she ever mentioned knowing you before you moved in? Or does her memory of you just start one day, like everyone else's seems to? Salt and iron. XX. The fact that Elliot goes there every evening and you have not asked him what he does when he gets to the bend is the most terrifying part of this whole post. You already know why you are not asking. You are right, and I hate that you are right. I have watched him leave every evening for 3 weeks now. I stand at the kitchen window and I watch him walk down the trail, and I never once open my mouth. Part of me is terrified he will tell me something I already know. The other part is terrified he will not remember leaving at all. 2 days later, Brooke posted again. I found my own missing person report in another state. I called my college. The registrar searched twice and told me there is no record of anyone with my name ever enrolling. I gave them my student number from memory. She said the number belongs to a different person who graduated in 2009. I hung up and looked up the address of my childhood home, the house on Greenfield, where I remember learning to ride a bike, where I got the scar on my jaw falling off the back fence. The family living there has owned the property for over 30 years. They never had a daughter. I sat in the archive parking lot for a long time after that. Then I used the interagency database we have access to through the county system, and I ran my own fingerprints. A missing person report came up, filed 7 years ago in another state. The name on the report is not Brooke. I have never heard it before. The photograph attached is not from 1952. It is recent. It is my face as it looks right now. My jawline, my scar. The report says this woman disappeared without a trace, and her family has never stopped looking. I think I understand the pattern now. It did not happen to those 11 people in the intake records. It happened to me. I crossed the bend at some point before I became Brooke, before Millhaven, before Elliot. And whatever I was before that crossing is still missing. The woman whose name is on that report is still gone. I am what came back instead. Nocturnal Watcher. Has anyone else noticed that every person in those intake records who visited the bend had the same gap? Like 2 to 3 months of no documentation at all before they reappear in the system? That is not a coincidence. Gray Line Research. I work in county records in a different state, and I have seen similar gaps. People who show up in a town with a fully formed life, but zero verifiable history before a certain date. It is more common than anyone wants to admit. Nocturnal Watcher. This is the comment that is going to keep me staring at my ceiling tonight. You are telling me this is not isolated to one river in one town? That there are thresholds like this elsewhere? How many people walking around right now have no idea they are living someone else's life? She found a number on the report. There was a contact listed on the missing person file. A family in a state I do not remember living in. I sat with my phone in my hand for 2 hours before I dialed. A woman picked up on the second ring. She did not say hello. She said, "I have been waiting 7 years for this call." I could not speak. I did not know her voice. I did not know her name.
She started crying and calling me something, a name that felt like a coat that did not fit. I hung up. I drove to the river. I parked where I always park and walked to the bend. The sycamore with the carvings was right there, the symbols catching the last of the light. I stood at the edge of the water where Elliot stands every night, and I felt it. Not a sound, not a current, just a pull, low and patient, like something remembering me. I understood what the bend was, not a place, a threshold, and I had already crossed it once. I did not step forward. I turned around and drove home. Elliot was in the kitchen making dinner. He smiled at me the way he always does. Forehead kiss, hand on the small of my back. But I looked at his face and I could not tell if he was the man I fell in love with 6 years ago, or the version that started coming home from the river with new words and rearranged cabinets and laughter in all the wrong places. I do not know if it matters. I do not know if I am the version of myself who has the right to ask. The woman on the phone is still waiting. The name on the missing person report is still not mine. The face in the 1952 photograph is still my face. I am not going back to the river. I am not calling that number again. I am staying in Millhaven with Elliot, in this house on Sycamore, in this life. Even if it was never mine to begin with, I am choosing it. That is the only thing I have left that feels like a decision I actually made. Delta Moth. Brooke, please do not go back to that river. Whatever you were before you crossed, you are someone now. That has to count for something. Delta Moth. Brooke, please do not go back to that river. Whatever you were before you crossed, you are someone now. That has to count for something. Thank you. I keep telling myself that. But some nights, I hear Elliot leave the house after I have gone to bed. I hear the front door close and his footsteps on the gravel. And I lie there and I do not get up. I do not follow him anymore. I just wait until he comes back. And every morning, he is still here. That is enough. It has to be enough. And that is the last story for today. Thanks for listening, and if you have not already, consider subscribing.